Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into the historical records, transforming them into a visual journey to uncover one of the absolute best-kept secrets of the Caribbean. We are heading over to the Samaná Peninsula in the Dominican Republic. Now, you probably know this place as a stunning tropical paradise, right? But as we're about to see, the true story of how it came to be is just an incredible tale of migration, resilience, and sheer cultural survival. So let's dive right into this. How exactly did a 19th century African-American community end up shaping what is now a bustling Dominican resort town? It's a real mystery, one that's completely hidden behind Samaná's modern reputation as this beautiful whale-watching hotspot. We're going to peel back the layers of this beach town to reveal a history that, honestly, you almost certainly didn't read about in your standard history classes. But it's one that completely rewrites how we understand the Caribbean. All right, Section 1. A Caribbean cultural anomaly. Okay, picture the Dominican Republic today. It's a predominantly Spanish-speaking Catholic nation, right? But if you look closely at the Samaná Peninsula, you find a literal linguistic time capsule, Samaná English. This isn't just a quirky accent. It's a variety of English derived directly from 19th century African-American vernacular English. For linguists, finding this is basically like discovering a living, breathing fossil. It completely scrambles the region's cultural code. I mean, we're talking about a direct, spoken connection to the antebellum United States, just thriving on a Caribbean island centuries later. It's like a whole separate reality survived right there on the mainland. And to put the sheer scale of this into perspective for you, in the 1950 Dominican Republic census, exactly 12,200 people identified English as their mother tongue. That was roughly 0.57% of the entire national population at the time. So this wasn't just, a handful of isolated families holding on to a couple of old traditions in secret. No, this was a massive, robust community fiercely defending their ancestral identity in their everyday lives. Moving right along to Section 2, the 1824 African-American migration. Let's set the stage with the core history that brought these settlers across the ocean to a totally foreign tropical island in the first place. Samaná was officially founded in 1756 by the Spanish. And the whole reason for founding it? Literally just to stop pirates from using its hidden bays as a hideout. But the real monumental shift happened in 1824 with this massive African-American migration. The peninsula actually became so strategically and culturally unique after that by 1869, U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant initiated negotiations to purchase the whole thing for a naval base. The U.S. Senate ultimately rejected the deal, but man, it just goes to show how geopolitically significant this little spot had become. So, how did this massive migration actually kick off? Well, imagine the immense pressure of living as a free Black person in a northern U.S. city like Philadelphia or Boston in the 1820s. The systemic inequality was just suffocating. Enter Haiti's president, Jean-Pierre Boyer, who actually controlled the entire island of Hispaniola at the time. He saw a huge opportunity and launched a highly organized campaign inviting free Black Americans to settle there. He even sent envoys like Jonathan Granville to hand-deliver these invitations. And this movement caught like wildfire because it was heavily backed by massive abolitionist figures like Richard Allen and Samuel Cornish. For the people packing their bags, this was an absolute leap of faith, leaving everything behind for a new nationality across the sea. The response was staggering. Over 6,000 African-American immigrants boarded ships for a new life during that massive wave in 1824 and 1825. But here is the really fascinating twist to our story. Out of those thousands of people who scattered all over Hispaniola, fewer than 600 actually settled in the Samaná Peninsula. Yet, against all odds, those specific 600 individuals formed the only immigration enclave of its kind to survive on the entire island to this day. Which brings us to Section 3, Survival in an Isolated Enclave. How in the world did a tiny group of fewer than 600 people manage to keep their specific identity, language, and religion totally intact for centuries? The answer is geography. For generations, Samaná was essentially an island on an island. It was naturally cut off from the rest of the Dominican mainland by practically impassable swamplands. If you wanted to leave, or if someone wanted to visit, you basically had to take a boat. And that extreme physical isolation is exactly what acted as a shield, effectively sealing them into a cultural time capsule. Inside that geographic bubble, they thrived entirely on their own terms. Reverend Peter Van Putten, the first pastor of the African Methodist Episcopal Church down there, was completely instrumental in holding everyone together. They strictly kept their English language alive through dedicated church schools. Visually, they totally transformed the landscape, building these gorgeous wooden gingerbread houses with intricate carvings, which is a staple of Anglo-Saxon architecture and looks nothing like Spanish colonial buildings. They even fused their traditions with local tropical ingredients, creating iconic dishes like Samaná fish cooked in rich coconut milk. It was a complete, functioning, hidden microcosm. Let's look at Section 4, Trial by Fire and Concrete. But, time capsules rarely stay sealed forever. Up until 1946, Samaná was defined by those charming, wooden, Victorian gingerbread houses and beautiful verandas. Honestly, it looked like a quiet little Anglo-Saxon village dropped right into the Caribbean. That year, a massive, devastating fire swept through and destroyed almost all of the historic wooden city. The government stepped in with a rapid reconstruction plan, and they completely changed the town's DNA. They ripped out the winding, narrow streets and replaced them with wide concrete avenues and stark state functionalism. Almost overnight, the city's original visual history was just erased. Amazingly, though, one major historic building survived the flames. Locally, they call it La Chercha, and it survived for a truly bizarre, actually a purely logistical reason. It wasn't made of wood. It's an industrial neo-Gothic church manufactured entirely out of galvanized iron in England back in the 1860s, and then shipped piece by piece across the Atlantic. That choice of using a metal frame is literally the only reason it withstood the incredible heat of the fire. Today, it stands as this striking dark metal monument against the bright tropical greenery. Following the fire, the government was absolutely determined to modernize the area. This massive push culminated in the 1970s when they built the Puente de los Cayos. It's this gigantic pedestrian bridge that connects the city's waterfront straight out to the small islands in the bay. It was originally supposed to be part of this lavish tourist complex, and it fundamentally altered the coastline. Today, it's Samaná's most iconic calling card. And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, the modern ecotourism capital. We are now entering the modern era. The geographical isolation officially ends, and Samaná opens its doors wide to the global tourism boom. The shattering of their isolation really happened in 3 massive steps. First, nature did the heavy lifting. In 1986, the bay was recognized as a global sanctuary for humpback whales, which instantly sparked an ecotourism rush. But the real game changers were infrastructure. To feed the tourism demand, El Cate International Airport opened in 2006. Then just 2 years later, the Juan Pablo II Highway was finished. That new road slashed the drive from Santo Domingo from a bumpy, grueling 5 hours down to a smooth 2-hour trip. The natural moats were finally bridged. Now, if you visit the waterfront today, you're going to see a complex called Pueblo Príncipe. It's very colorful, super popular, and always packed with visitors. But here's the catch. It's actually a modern pseudo-historical shopping center designed specifically to imitate the lost Victorian gingerbread style that burned down back in 1946. It is such a fascinating paradox, right? They built this shiny tourist facade mimicking the past, while the authentic, deeper heritage, like the Samaná English and the actual descendants, is rapidly becoming endangered because of this exact same wave of modernization. And that brings us to our final thought for today. As government policies, modern infrastructure, and mass tourism keep putting immense pressure on this incredible cultural anomaly, we have to ask a really vital question. As Samaná welcomes the world, how can it balance this much-needed economic rebirth with the survival of the endangered, unique history that actually put it on the map in the first place? It's a complex challenge of preservation, and one we can all learn a lot from. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history behind the destinations.